Today's video is about real in-person insight and reflections. We're going to be talking about customer psychology, community, fashion, and a bit of sustainability in business. Let's get into it. So this week I attended the partnership event between By Rotation and Reformation. And honestly, I left with way more founder lessons than I expected. To give some context, By Rotation is a leading peer-to-peer fashion rental platform founded in October 2019 by Ashita Cabra Davies. And the goal is to promote circular fashion. The app goes by this phrase of being the Airbnb of fashion, and they operate in the UK and the US. So they allow users to rent and lend premium designer clothes to reduce textile waste. And Reformation is actually a Los Angeles-based clothing brand, which is now worldwide, and they pride themselves in being the most sustainable clothing option with eco-friendly materials, low-impact manufacturing, and cute, trendy clothes. The takeaways from this event weren't just sustainability lessons. I went for actual business lessons, and one thing I've been realizing recently is that sometimes the most valuable thing you can do as a founder is simply to put yourself in rooms where people are building things differently. So there were a few things that really stayed with me after the event. The first was something Ashita, founder of By Rotation, said when I asked her a question about customer behavior. Because if you think about it, peer-to-peer fashion rental was not necessarily normal behavior when she started, right? People were still deeply attached to the ownership of their clothes, and some still are today. So my question to her was basically, how do you navigate introducing people to a completely different behavior pattern when you're building something so innovative? And her answer was honestly such an important reminder for founders. She spoke about how in the beginning, her immediate circle were her friends from her corporate background because she came from a finance background. And they weren't necessarily the early adopters for what she was building. So she had to challenge herself to go into the fashion and sustainability world to find people who would gain real value from what she had to offer. And I think that's such an underrated lesson because sometimes your friends and family are not your market. They're not your target audience, if we're being very honest. And that's okay. I know people say that all the time, but it was nice hearing a different story around that fact. Because I think a lot of founders secretly look for validation from the people closest to them first. I did it in the beginning. And sometimes, as founders, we might be offended when our closest friends aren't the first to support what we're building. But innovation often requires finding entirely new communities. What Ashita did is that she immersed herself into fashion circles, sustainability circles, people who already emotionally understood the value proposition. And that's such a key lesson. Sometimes your job is not convincing everyone. Your job is finding your people. Finding the people who already think similarly to the future that you're trying to build. And honestly, that applies to fashion, to tech, to sustainability, anything that you're building. A lot of founders waste years trying to convince the wrong audience instead of locating the right audience for them. That really stayed with me, especially as I'm relaunching a company in a completely new country. Another thing I found interesting was hearing about how Reformation is already climate positive, while a lot of brands are still aiming to become net positive by 2030. For context, being climate positive means a company removes more greenhouse gases from the atmosphere than it emits. So instead of just reducing harm, Reformation says that they are reducing harm, but also creating a net positive environmental impact. And now they're actually pushing towards full circularity by 2030, way ahead of the game compared to a lot of people in the industry. And that's a huge difference, right? So while some companies are still trying to catch up to where the industry currently is, others are already trying to leap ahead of where the industry is going. And there's another founder lesson there. Aim bigger than the standard. Don't build according to where the market currently sits, right? That's the whole point of innovation. If you can go further, do that by all means. Build according to where you believe the market is headed. It doesn't always have to be where the market currently is. Because if you only aim for what everyone else is aiming for, you'll always be moving at the pace of the industry. But companies that become category defining usually move before everyone else fully understands the direction that they're going at. And I think that applies so much right now, especially in sustainability. The companies that will win long term are probably the ones building systems today that feel too ambitious for everybody else. Things like this truly inspire me about 919 Vrede and what we are building with cotton farmers in West Africa for regenerative agriculture. But back to the event, another really interesting conversation was around rentals themselves, because rentals actually reveal something very honest about product quality. A garment that's worn repeatedly tells the truth, whether we like it or not, right? You can't really hide behind branding once a piece has been reworn multiple times and we start seeing, the seams and the threads sticking out. It's funny because over the past couple of years, so many customers, influencers, different people have been complaining about the quality of sustainable brands and even just premium or some luxury brands that we know in general. And I thought that was really fascinating because some brands charge premium prices, but after multiple wears, the garments start losing their shape, they start pulling, fading badly, and more. And it was interesting too to also realize that some brands do not like their clothes being listed on rental platforms. Some of them might even go ahead and sue some of these platforms. This is some tea that I didn't even know. Back to the quality, at some point, right, the product itself has to speak. And I think consumers today are becoming significantly smarter when it comes to quality and all of these things. They're analyzing construction, fabric, and just longevity way more than they did before. And especially with the economy right now, customers want emotional value and physical value. If you're charging premium prices, the product has to actually withstand life, not just look good in a campaign shoot, okay? Those days are over. And then finally, networking. I know people roll their eyes when people say networking is important, but genuinely, it really is. One thing I've always done at events is you will always find me seated in the front and I will always ask a question. Always. If it's a webinar, if it's in person, whatever, I'm gonna ask a question. And it's so funny because Ashita actually gave the same advice on Instagram when they were promoting their event. So ask the question, participate, because the truth is people always remember people who engage. And honestly, I think a lot of opportunities come from visibility in rooms, not just performative visibility online. I mean, real-time visibility with curiosity and engagement and just contribution. People remember thoughtful questions way more than we actually realize. And it's so much easier for people to network with you as well after the event because they can remember the question that you asked. The best opportunities throughout fashion and business can really just come from speaking up in rooms. So overall, I left the event feeling really inspired, honestly. I also got to wander around the store, feel the materials, try on some clothes, and ask questions to their team. One thing I always appreciate about in-person retail is when the staff are very, very well versed about the products, the company's strategies, their values, and those type of things, because that is where so much conversion actually lies. And sometimes people miss that opportunity when they don't train their staff to be good representatives and ambassadors of the company. But yeah, overall, I was really inspired by the reminder that building something meaningful requires understanding behavior, finding your people, thinking ahead of the market, making genuinely good products, and staying curious enough to keep learning publicly. And honestly, those are probably the lessons I needed this week. So yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments, especially around sustainability, rentals, or even founder lessons you've been learning recently. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, subscribe, comment if you can, share this with a friend if you would like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. But remember, as always, you are built different, built to last. See you.